Welcome to OM Report by Andre Alpa, your interview-focused podcast on topics from online marketing to internet startups.
Hi Eric, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Eric Enge, CEO of Stone Temple Consulting, 25 plus person SEO, social media, and content marketing consulting firm.
Okay. Are you specialized in certain fields when it comes to it? Like, are you more working strategically, or do you have like clients in a specific niches that you focus on, like e-commerce or travel, or are you like broadly there for everybody who needs help in the field that you work in?
Actually, we do offer pretty broad coverage. There's certainly room for agencies that focus on one vertical market, but then you have to be really purist about that, in my experience, because if I have, say, one client in the hotel industry and I have a lot of other clients and then I get a second client in the hotel industry, they get upset. Whereas if I do nothing but hotels, then I can actually be vertical. But given that we don't do that, it makes sense for us to actually be horizontal in our approach.
Do clients want you to guarantee them that you will not take a different client that is a competitor, like a second client that is a direct competitor? And how do you deal with that?
It happens. We usually don't like to sign that in our contract language, but the reality is, even if it isn't in the contract, we're pretty reluctant to take someone in the same space. So we actually had a situation just mid last year where we had a very large client in a particular industry come to us, and we were working with a second, a solid second tier player, but we actually couldn't take it because it just didn't feel right.
All right. Okay. So what are kind of the issues that people come to you with, and why do they choose you? I mean, because the States are a huge market, and there's obviously like gazillions of SEO agencies there. Right. Is they come to you because they know you because you've always been there, or what do you say? What is the kind of what differentiates you from other SEO agencies?
Yeah. So I think if you were to talk about what our brand is about, our brand is about. Gosh, it's such a mundane phrase. People talk about white hat SEO, and it really doesn't do it justice because a lot of people say they do that. So let me actually explain it the following way. I wrote a blog post which I published on SEO Moz in 2008 called "I Don't Buy Links," and at the time the community was telling me that I was bringing a knife to a gunfight. But we have always tried to be well ahead of the curve and focus our activities on excelling at the things that Google wants you to do, rather than trying to figure out how to trick Google. And whether you call yourself white hat or not, a lot of SEOs who say they are white hat are actually still trying to find the latest little tactic.
Tactic as in shortcut, because otherwise tactic can be okay. Tactic can be like a white hat tactic as well.
Shortcut is the right word. That's a great word for it.
Or trick, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So they're looking for that. So they might not be violating some overt guidelines, so they think of themselves as white hat. But we actually focus on excelling at what Google wants you to do. And if I could take another moment, I'd like to illustrate a couple things. In January of 2011, I published on Search Engine Land an article called "The Rise and Fall of Content Farms." That was 3 weeks before Panda. Okay. Two different times. Later in 2011, I wrote articles which basically predicted the onset of Penguin.
So what did those articles focus on? Exact match anchor tags, or what was the focus of the articles in general?
The focus of the articles in general was basically saying that the next big thing Google is going to do, the next Panda-like release, was going to be a link-based release. And I did make some predictions about specifics, but because of the way we focus, the way we study the industry, and also the interviews I regularly do with people who work at the search engines. I've done many with Matt Cutts, for example. And we focus all of that energy on understanding how they think and where they want to go, so that we can actually lead our clients down a path where they have long-term viability with their SEO strategy. So that's how we differentiate ourselves, I think, is with that focus.
Okay, does make sense. So when you prepare for an interview with Matt Cutts, how do you decide, which questions to ask and which not to ask? Because my experience with Google people is that the willingness of answering depends really on what and how the questions are asked.
It does, and the first and most crucial step is to have their trust. All right, so we actually use a process where we do the interview, but they're allowed to review the final transcript before it's published. And that gives them comfort that if there's a misstatement made, or our transcription is wrong or whatever, so that gets them relaxed. But also because they're familiar with how we work with our clients, they tend to approach that conversation a little bit more relaxed. And then you have to ask the questions the right way. But we do that. I do that naturally because it comes from this perspective of always trying to help publishers figure out how to put together a strategy that will give them long, secure, steady growth for a long period of time. They can grow their business. And so that's actually what I'm trying to get at, which is kind of what the Googler wants me to be getting at, right? So that kind of works really well.
All right, so your team of 25 people, what are the different tasks that they have? Like, how are they separated into different topics?
Yeah, so link building / content marketing is a very big part of what we do. And I think this is a little bit of how I view how SEO is evolving, and it's always been a little bit this way, but you're going to have this function which is, call it SEO promotion, right?
It's a little bit like PR maybe, right?
Yes, it's going to feel more and more PR-ish. What will distinguish it from PR is there's always going to be room for the new digital marketing tactic that the PR department of the traditional PR department is too slow to pick up on, right? So content marketing, the integration of social media and publishing great content and getting links, that's an example of something that the PR department isn't ready to handle. So that's the realm of the modern age SEO marketer, if you will. But then there's still the other part of SEO, and that's another major function in the company, is dealing with the nuts and bolts of the website. So
like the technical SEO aspect of the whole thing.
Right. People still, they're too quick to believe that because you publish a website that the search engines can understand it. And even people who accepted that 5 years ago think, oh, it must be different now. Well, it isn't. The problems are the same. I mean, duplicate content is still a huge problem in the industry. But there's new things emerge, like doing rich snippets and rel author tagging, and I mean, these are all, by the way, cries for help from the search engines. We need help, right? And
there was this hope that they're going to understand everything and be semantically, advanced. But now, basically, they're pushing this semantical understanding of the content to the publishers themselves. So they're kind of outsourcing the work to us.
Right. Mark it up and tell us.
Yeah.
Which fine, you should do that. It's actually good for them. It's good for the publisher. So it's not a bad thing.
It's always good for the publisher. For example, I always think of this recipe rich snippets as a bad example for integrating the rich snippets, because in the end, I mean, if you had a recipe website, you would have had a lot of traffic on aggregating terms. I don't know, like tomato soup recipes. It's not one specific recipe, but a group of recipes. And on those aggregating pages, you would have huge amounts of traffic. And these days, you've marked down your recipes, and Google takes the filtering traffic and the traffic on aggregating terms, and then just sends you the customer when they're on one single recipe. And recipe websites, they're typically publishers, so they earn off advertising dollars.
Right.
And now there's less page impressions.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It really is a great question. And this is a place where you need to start, again, as I talked about, to sort of get in the head of Google and what they want publishers to be doing. And it's incredibly important in today's web internet marketing environment and for SEO to focus a lot of energy on building a brand.
So you get navigational traffic, not informational, not transactional traffic, but navigational traffic.
So you get navigational traffic, that's true, but also even though you'll lose some traffic to that rich snippet stuff, in the scenario that you outlined, there's other scenarios that will get you more traffic. But
no doubt. If they haven't figured it out how to get traffic on the aggregating pages, they've always been only getting traffic on the single recipe. Then of course they'll get more because.
Right. So there's sort of trade-offs, but you're going to have to look at the rich snippet experience in the situation, the category, the aggregating page situation you talked about, as an opportunity to get their brand in front of the consumer and assume/hope that the benefit will, well, when they want a specific recipe or something else, that a new query of, oh, I remember them, they actually gave me the information, and they'll get to your page. So you kind of have to get that.
But wouldn't you have to go for the brand even without the rich snippets? I mean, that's not just,
well, you would.
It just makes more pressure on you having to become a brand.
Yes.
But that was a strategy that you should have also chosen like before.
That's right. A very important thing for people to realize is that there's all this discussion from time to time about how Google loves and favors brands. Well, there's actually a really fundamental and simple reason for that. Because a brand is a proxy for the user trusts that.
Sure.
So the search engine wants to show things that the user trusts and is more likely to click on. It's that simple, right? So the need to work on a brand is always there. This puts a lot of pressure on pure affiliate marketers and people like that who were flinging up sites and working them the magic to get traffic. But
what do you think is their future, and how do you think their life, their whatever they were doing, how did that develop since last year?
Yeah,
do you think it's like the market is like half the size now, or because Panda and Penguin basically crushed exactly those? I think the regular brands, they were hardly ever influenced by Penguin and Panda. It was more these affiliates that you've just mentioned that always did their magic and arbitrage traffic, getting it from SEO, pushing it to either to AdSense or to affiliate, right?
Yeah. So there's still a lot of affiliates that are doing quite well. Some of which deserve to, and some of which don't. But I can tell you, I've been doing affiliate publishing as a second business aside from my consulting business for 11 years, and I've built and sold 3 affiliate companies. So I have a lot of experience in this. But we always focused on building a brand with what we were doing. So the things don't have to be separate.
Can you probably give an example so one can understand better what you were talking about, or is it not public, the topics?
No, I mean there's a site called citytowninfo.com that we built and published that has still information on 20,000+ cities and towns in the United States, and various vertically oriented product information directories on it that did quite well. We sold that in 2010, and the site I think is still doing well today, from what I understand.
Do you know whether it was hit by Penguin or Panda, just out of curiosity?
Actually, I don't know. I do know that even when you try to be as clean as possible, you can get hit by these algorithms.
Sure.
So we had another site, which I can't name, that in fact was hit by Panda. We recovered it. We went through the hard work of getting it back out from under that. And the reason why it was hit by Panda was kind of ironic. It's actually a good example of a Panda situation. We had about 5,000 pages covering some very specific businesses. We went to great pains to make those pages much higher than quality than the other ones in the market. But, and that was just a portion of the site. We ended up finding out that even though we thought those were much better than the other pages, Google didn't, and we got out of the penalty when we no-indexed those pages. And it gets down to, in the Panda situation, how does Google recognize and decide whether it's good or bad? Thin content, crappy spelling, those things are easy, right? But they're clearly making decisions on more metrics than that.
Sure. So that would be something like bounce rate, like time on site.
That's my belief, that it's user engagement metrics.
Okay, but do you think really, it sounded a little bit like enriched local information that you had on those pages?
Yes, and we actually did.
It's like a yellow pages thing, but specific for a niche.
Yeah, well, what I can tell you, it was information on all the colleges and universities in the U.S.
Okay.
And there's about 7,000 of them.
And even though your information was richer than the average in the SERPs, you still think it wasn't equally?
Yeah, we had handwritten, hand-researched, handwritten articles on about 5,000 of those pages.
Wow.
And even for the other 2,000, we did a lot of analysis to do things like give ratings for your percentage of male versus female as compared to other colleges of a similar size, and difficulty of getting in. We had a ton of things that we worked out that you can't get unless you do a lot of work.
Wow.
But the problem was it wasn't perceivable. The user engagement, I guess, wasn't good enough. It wasn't user perceivable quickly enough. And you have a couple seconds for the user to make their decision, right? And we probably needed to do a lot of
like a redesign to make it more fancy, so people would stay there, click around, look a little bit more into it.
Yeah, exactly. We needed to do that kind of stuff, but where we were in the business at that time, once we came to that conclusion, we tried no indexing it. It fixed it. We never actually went back and tried to do the rest of that work.
Right.
You know, but
that's great stuff. Great stuff. All right. What do you think? The content marketing is kind of like the uber topic when I look around here. Whenever it comes to off-page topics, is there like classical approaches? I mean, infographics. At least me, I'm bored by them. I don't want to hear about it anymore, and I don't think it's content marketing at all. What's your view on content marketing? What is it? What is it actually, and what is it not?
Yeah, so I think let's talk about the gold standard for content marketing.
Yes, okay. Like what you would, like your dream client should do.
Yeah, so what we try to get people to do is it's a multi-level approach. So I'll just itemize a few things. First of all, have high quality content on their site, of course. That may come in the form of a blog, right? Which is often a good way to do it. You have to have a subject matter expert behind that. As I like to say, have a subject matter expert or experts, or go home.
Yeah, like a preacher, like a teacher and preacher.
Yeah, if somebody or some group of people needs to fit that role, or don't play, okay? Because you'll lose in the end. And you do that on site, but you want to do more than that. You also want to do what I'll call very high-end guest posting, which is you do publish, well, example, New York Times has taken over 10,000 guest posts. We know TechCrunch has taken many thousands. Mashable has taken many thousands. So
it could be also a guest post the other way around. How about having a trusted author doing a guest post on your company's blog? Is that?
Yes, you could do that too. Right. So, and you actually want to do all these things. You want to be, now that you have your own good content put on your site, you also want to outreach to other people, because that gains you exposure in front of their audiences, including their social media audiences. And then you want to invite prominent people to guest blog with you. You can. Not everybody has to do that, but it's a good idea, because if you get Seth Godin to write an article and put it on your site, he's probably going to tweet it and share it, and that's phenomenal, right? And then there's a cousin of that, which is you can interview prominent people, which has the same dynamic, and now they don't have to go through the trouble of writing the article, and you can probably get even more prominent people to participate in that, because it's flattering to be asked to be interviewed, right? And
you're not referring to this interview, are you?
Not at all.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. Otherwise, I was like. So I was just like weird feeling.
Yeah, well, there you go. It sort of dawned on me. Okay, I might interpret that way, but anyway.
Don't worry.
And of course, have your subject matter expert give interviews. So all these things really help gain exposure, and you then want to combine that with a very solid social media strategy. Okay, and I've been on the record many times, and I still believe that social media signals don't act the same way links do. But that doesn't matter. We don't have to have that argument right now. The point is, from a content marketing perspective, if you're constantly putting good content out on social media and you share your great content, whether it be a guest post somewhere else, an interview you gave someone, or an article or an interview you put on your own site, you now have a beautiful holistic thing happening, which is the fact that you share this great content on your social media feed helps with your followers or fans, because they see great content and you get more followers and fans. That's a good thing, it sounds like. And then they share it on the, when you share it on the social media feed, that gets traffic and links and subscribers back to your blog. Sure. That sounds like a good thing. And now you have this wonderful virtuous circle taking place. This is what you need to build.
Right.
Okay.
So how does it, you look with your clients, do you, in those cases, are you more like on an operative level where you really help them, okay, hey, this is how your articles, topics for your articles could be, or you just do it on the meta level, I suggest them, okay, this is the process, and then you fill out the blanks yourself, or how does it mostly work?
We help them with both.
Okay.
Okay. You have to get the strategic part right, or else they won't do the other parts, right? So they're really important to go through that, and you know, I mean, as I suggested before, we're talking about activity that the traditional PR firm doesn't understand. Well, the traditional marketing person doesn't understand it too. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of really cutting-edge marketing people who get it that are in companies. But a lot of times in these companies, you have to go through a lot of education.
I totally share your views that where it's kind of content marketing is bringing marketing, PR, and SEO together. So I totally share your views here.
Right, yeah. And it's, so that's a big part of it. But they also don't have the people lying around that know how to execute the mechanics of it. So we offer that too. So we do both together. Yeah. And it's worked really well. We've had some great successes with it.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for your time, Eric.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
OM Report and Andre Alpa would like to thank you for your attention. You can get more episodes on www.OMReport.com.